The middle-income trap is usually discussed at the national level, but income data in the United States shows that the same pattern is clearly repeating at the individual level. A 2017 income life cycle study published by the Federal Reserve found that median income tends to rise sharply during the first 10 to 15 years of a career before entering a long period of stagnation. Many people continue working steadily year after year, yet their accumulated wealth changes very little over time. This happens because while income eventually stabilizes, the cost of living keeps rising. Annual CPI data published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that housing, health care, and insurance costs have increased consistently over the long term. As a result, the gap between how much people earn and how much they are actually able to keep continues to shrink. This is the environment in which the personal middle-income trap has become increasingly common in modern life. Welcome to A Kid's Dream, a space where we bring together ideas, data, and research to help you strengthen your financial thinking. One thing to be clear about from the start, you won't find any get-rich-quick formulas in this video. What we're sharing here is a synthesis of research and reports on how people move beyond the personal middle-income trap, a stage many experience during what's often called the rat race. As always, take what's useful, adapt it to your own situation, and think critically. If there's any data that needs clarification or additional context, feel free to leave a comment below. Let's begin. In development economics, the World Bank describes the middle-income trap as a slowdown in growth when productivity fails to upgrade. If we think of each person as a small economy with time and skills as inputs and income and assets as outputs, then escaping the trap requires similar strategies. Improving productivity, managing behavior, building systems, and accumulating assets over time. Strategy 1. Productivity. The first strategy starts with a very practical question: how much value does 1 hour of your work actually create for the market? The Future of Work report published by the OECD in 2019 shows that long-term income growth is driven primarily by high-knowledge content skills, rather than by simply working longer hours. In everyday life, this difference is easy to observe. Two people may hold the same position and work the same number of hours, but the one who consistently improves how the work gets done tends to create more value. That person streamlines processes, proposes solutions, and helps systems run more smoothly. Over time, the market rewards this added value, not just the number of hours logged. Technology also plays a central role in this strategy. Research by David Otter published in Journal of Economic Perspectives in 2015 describes skill-biased technological change, where technology amplifies the value of certain skills. When individuals use technology to scale their productivity, automating repetitive tasks and enhancing decision-making, the marginal output of each working hour increases significantly. At the everyday level, this can be surprisingly simple. Someone might use AI tools to draft reports, automation to manage workflows, or software to coordinate projects. A more intuitive example is farming. Machinery allows a farmer to cultivate far more land with greater efficiency than manual labor ever could. The amount of work doesn't disappear, but more time is freed for thinking, planning, and problem-solving. This is how technology strengthens Strategy 1 without pushing people toward burnout. When work is systemized into processes and supported by technology, the value created no longer depends entirely on personal memory or individual experience. A well-designed system can be reused many times over. At the individual level, this is how skills become intellectual assets, allowing productivity to remain stable and scale gradually over time. But as Strategy 1 begins to take effect and income starts to improve, another challenge tends to appear very quickly. Research by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton, published in 2010, shows that emotional satisfaction rises with income only up to a certain point and then levels off. This is the foundation of what behavioral economists call the hedonic treadmill, where a person's standard of living increases along with their income. In daily life, the hedonic treadmill is easy to recognize. As income increases, spending usually follows. People upgrade their homes, their services, and their conveniences. After a relatively short period of time, the sense of satisfaction returns to its previous baseline, while most of the additional income has already been absorbed by consumption. Without a behavioral strategy in place, much of the progress created by strategy one never turns into lasting assets. The second strategy, behavioral management, focuses on proactively managing spending and saving. This does not mean extreme frugality. You can still improve your lifestyle, but consider spending on what truly matters. In addition, as your income increases, decide in advance which portion will go towards savings and long-term investments, and the rest will be used for living expenses. This approach allows incremental income to flow into assets first, rather than being pulled away by short-term emotions. The logic behind this strategy aligns closely with the principles outlined in Nudge, published by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein in 2008. When behavior is placed on a default track, better decisions occur more consistently without relying heavily on willpower. For working professionals, this turns financial discipline into a lifestyle design choice rather than a constant mental struggle. Strategy 2 also extends to how stability itself is used. Once basic financial security is established, that stability can be reinvested into learning new skills, taking on more challenging projects, or expanding meaningful relationships. Over time, these behaviors compound into new capabilities and opportunities, allowing income to grow in a more sustainable way. When strategy 1 and 2 operate together, two things happen simultaneously. Each hour of work generates more value, and a greater share of that value is retained in forms that continue to matter over the long term. This combination creates the foundation for the next phase, where income gradually begins to separate from the limits of individual labor. In the next section, we move into two additional strategies that define a very different long-term financial trajectory. As the first two strategies take hold, income becomes more stable and assets no longer remain stagnant. Yet at this stage, many people encounter a new ceiling: time. A day still has only 24 hours and personal energy remains finite. The central question changes from how can I perform better to how can I scale. Strategy 3: Leverage and systems. The third strategy begins by changing the structure of how income is created. Instead of relying solely on individual effort, attention shifts toward leverage. In economic terms, leverage appears when a single decision produces a larger impact by using capital, technology, or the efforts of others. This marks the transition from being an operator to becoming a system designer. Research on inequality and wealth accumulation by Thomas Piketty, published in 2014, shows that income generated from assets and systems tends to grow faster than income derived purely from labor. At the individual level, this pattern becomes clear when someone controls capital flows, technology, or the coordinated work of many people. Income starts to scale rather than remaining tightly bound to personal time and skills. Consider a familiar example. A fitness trainer or a highly skilled physician often reaches a ceiling once their schedule becomes fully booked. When that person begins standardizing processes, hiring others to execute, and shifting into a guiding or managerial role, the income structure starts to change. Earnings now reflect the ability to design and coordinate a system rather than the number of hours worked directly. This is strategy 3 in its most visible form. Technology makes this strategy significantly more powerful. A productivity report by McKinsey published in 2020 shows that digital technology dramatically reduces marginal costs as systems scale. A single piece of content, a digital product, or a distribution system can serve thousands of people without a proportional increase in operating time. Imagine a few examples. A doctor expands from individual consultations to operating a network of clinics. A musician releases a song that can be replayed millions of times and generate royalty income. A programming instructor records lessons once and sells courses to thousands of students. In each case, the system continues to deliver value beyond the creator's direct involvement. As systems become stable, income gradually separates from the number of hours spent working each day. This does not happen instantly and requires significant upfront effort. But once it does, the financial trajectory changes in a fundamental way. At that point, you might ask yourself, am I still selling time or optimizing skills or beginning to design systems that others can operate? Once income begins to separate from time, the focus naturally shifts away from how much more can be earned each month. A longer-term question takes its place. What total value am I building, and how capable is it of generating returns in the future? This is where strategy for net worth thinking starts to take shape. Research in personal finance consistently shows that people who prioritize optimizing net worth tend to achieve more durable financial stability. Net worth thinking redirects attention from short-term cash flow to long-term accumulated value. Income can fluctuate from one phase of life to another, from project to project, or from decision to decision. But net worth captures the bigger picture. The assets that continue to create value even when you are not actively working every day. Simply put, when you own a house for rent, you still receive monthly rent without having to work too hard. Therefore, this house is an asset that generates value for you. When you shift your perspective to total assets, you begin to evaluate your career and financial decisions over a much longer time frame. In Principles, published in 2017, Ray Dalio describes wealth as the outcome of repeated decision-making based on probability, risk, and time. From this perspective, decisions do not need to be perfectly correct in the short run. What matters is whether they are favorable in expectation over the long run. Net worth thinking encourages choices that carry sustainable advantages, even when immediate outcomes remain uncertain. Naval Ravikant distilled this mindset even further in his talks and essays around 2018 with a simple line: "Seek wealth, not money." In his view, wealth consists of assets that continue to generate value without requiring constant effort. From this perspective, salary is merely cash flow, while assets are the source of long-term freedom of choice. Net worth thinking can be understood through an open formula. Total net worth assets are financial assets minus liabilities and include intellectual capital and social capital. Each of these components together determines future income generation, opportunities, and choices. View this way, you begin to measure progress using more metrics than just monthly income figures. Income-generating assets may include stocks, funds, or small businesses. Intellectual capital consists of hard-to-replace skills such as strategic thinking, technology fluency, and creative problem-solving. Social capital lives in reputation, professional networks, and personal brand. As these assets grow in parallel, they reinforce one another. Skills unlock opportunities, opportunities build assets, and assets amplify reputation and networks. As your total assets increase, cash flow and opportunities begin to come to you more naturally. You no longer have to constantly chase short-term jobs or income. Instead, you have the ability to choose. Choose your projects, your partners, and choose a lifestyle that suits you. His is the deeper objective of strategy for building a financial position that allows life decisions to be made with favorable probabilities over the long run. If you find this perspective helpful, I will continue to share similar analyses on finance, economics, and how the world works. Stories with depth and substance for you to reflect upon and build your own path. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to receive the latest notifications about upcoming content from a kid's dream. Thank you.